up, Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. In the day of the word, child, it brings for hell. That's a mighty long time, but I'm here to say, one child. Don't lie, the world you're living in. Take a look around. At least you got friends. I call my old lady on friendly word. She picked up the phone, dropped it on the floor. That's all I heard. I'm gonna let the elevator break us down. Oh no, let's go crazy. Let's get nuts. Look for the purple banana until they put us in the truck. Let's go. Excited, don't know why. Maybe it's 'cause we're all gonna die. When we do, what's it all for? Better live now, before the people come knocking on your door. Tell me, gonna let the elevator break us down. Oh no, let's go crazy.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to Geopolitics with Ghost. Apologize for the slow start. I think we're having issues on Rumble. If you are watching on Rumble or trying to watch on Rumble, you probably aren't even hearing me, but watch on YouTube or X. I posted the links in the chat. This is just back of house issues connecting StreamYard to Rumble. So, yeah, we'll get those resolved. I'm going to play a video here to start us off. Let's see, man. I'm sorry that just kind of threw me through a loop. I was trying to see if I could get it resolved myself, but unfortunately, John, if you are over here, because you have rated us, if you know how the API key needs to be replaced, is what it says, and so that unfortunately is not something that I am familiar with doing. But anyway, we will figure it out. We're going to roll with the punches. So let's start with Maria Corina Machado, of course, because she was at the White House for the meeting with Trump. And I actually want to start with this video that CanCon sent me. CanCon sent a interesting theory over this morning, so a little facet of this story that I was not familiar with, that I had not picked up on. That was mentioned kind of almost in passing by CNN, because I wrote a take about this in the news brief this morning, and we're going to play the videos that I uploaded there. But interesting little comment here from what's her name, Caitlin from CNN. Let's go there. What else do we know about this meeting?
You know, Jake, it's interesting that we actually have not heard that much from the White House on this meeting, or, you know, that was news to us when Machado came out and said that she had presented her prize to the president. It wasn't shocking. It was something we had expected because she had been talking about it. And obviously the president has made his desire to win the Nobel Peace Prize quite clear time and time again, and has repeatedly said that he believes he should have won it in place of Machado, who called him right after she won it. And so, Jake, we did see her arriving here at the White House today, and we were looking at pictures because obviously she is carrying a bag. We've not heard yet confirmation from the White House that the president did indeed receive this.
Okay, so what CanCon sent to me or sent to our group this morning was this bag, this red bag. And this is interesting because when I did my little write up for the news brief, I jested that, maybe she'll get a some cool swag. Maybe she'll get some cool souvenirs from the White House gift shop. And here we have, that's Donald Trump's signature on the bag. This must be a bag, I guess, they give out to tourists, I guess, people who buy stuff from the gift shop. But CanCon went and asked the machine. So I'm sharing the ChatGPT screenshot that he sent me, which is right here. If this thing will zoom in. There we go. And he asked it, have other White House guests besides Maria Corina Machado been seen with the red bag leaving the White House? No, there are no reports of other White House guests besides Maria Corina Machado being seen leaving the White House with the red bag. The recent incident on January 15th involving Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado is the only notable case matching this description. She met with President Donald Trump at the White House, presented him with her 2025 Nobel Peace Prize, and was photographed leaving while carrying a distinctive red Trump-branded swag bag, often described as a MAGA cap red with gold embossing of Trump's signature. This gift bag is reportedly limited to specific invited guests and VIPs. Here's some photos from news coverages and et cetera. And so here's my comment from the news brief. I hope they at least give her some cool souvenirs from the White House gift shop. Yeah, very, 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 very weird. They actually did give her some cool souvenirs from the White House gift shop. So all very, very strange. But let's kind of back up. So I don't know what to make of that. I think that's just a goofy little facet of this, but let's back up because this whole meeting was very goofy. I was joking on what's today? Today's Friday. So I was joking on Tuesday, or maybe it was Wednesday, whichever day I was doing the Maria Corina Machado dig, or the Venezuela dig or commentary on it, that the way Trump responded to Sean Hannity when Sean Hannity asked, "Are you going to meet with Maria Corina Machado?" And he said, "Yeah, I think she wants to come." I think I have the clip in here. Let's see. Let's just play the clip. All right, here it is.
Okay, she won the Nobel Peace Prize. When she accepted that Peace Prize, she dedicated it to you. She said to me this week, both on TV and radio, that she wants to give the Nobel Prize, her Nobel Peace Prize, to you for liberating her country. In 2023, she won over 92% of the vote to be the leader of the opposition. Maduro kept her off the ballot. Do you have any plans to meet with her? And would you accept the Nobel Prize she wants to hand to you?
Well, I understand she's coming in next week sometime. And I look forward to saying hello to her. And I've heard that she wants to do that. That would be a great honor. Mm-hmm. I did put out 8 wars, 8 and a quarter, because, Thailand and Cambodia started going at it again. So
I'll put the list up
I give a
if you
quarter,
want.
so it's,
Yeah.
you put the list out, it's a hell of a list.
Yeah, so what's funny, I think Burning Bright and I talked about this on Sunday on the Narrative. What's funny is Hannity is set this whole thing up. He interviewed Maria Corina Machado, asked her if she would be willing to give Trump the Nobel Peace Prize. She said, yeah, I think that's something we've really been thinking about, because he said, I've been reading online that you might consider this. Are you going to do it? And then he turned around and told Trump that she said, she offered that up. This is a face-saving exercise for sure. And what makes it so funny is that there were reports from a number of outlets, I think a week ago, I got it right here, that Trump was, I think the Washington Post, which of course is the party or the newspaper of the CIA, said that Trump was very bitter that she accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. And because of that, that's why he was turning away from her. He was turning away from her. All of this, again, feels very WrestleMania. But this is the way that my commentary, my joking commentary was that, yeah, we'll leave the side door open for her or something. He doesn't seem very enthused about meeting with her. Oh, yeah, I heard she wants to come say hello. Like we'll do that. We'll say hello to her. Not like a formal meeting between, world leaders, just a tour of the White House and a swag bag. But then this is what happens when she arrives at the White House. And this went viral yesterday. And the prevailing commentary is that nobody came outside to meet her. I mean, she's like checking in at like the gate. Like nobody's there. Marco Rubio's not there. Deputy from the State Department, Deputy Secretary of State, nothing like that. Caroline Leavitt, nobody. There's nobody there. She's walking in off the street by herself.
María Corina, ¿qué espera la reunión con Trump?
Like she's a tourist. She's like with all the other people like in a White House tour. It's just crazy. I mean, look at that. That's like where the people, like if I were to go visit the White House as a tourist, this is, I'm pretty sure, where I would walk through, right? They didn't even drive her up to the back entrance, like they always do the world leaders. They drive them up and then they open the door. Like even Netanyahu, when he was being disrespected and humiliated by Trump, even Netanyahu got driven up to the White House and Trump came out by himself with no color guard and let him in. They just like, oh yeah, just come in as a tourist. Okay. I mean, this is a humiliation ritual, in my opinion, for sure. And then we get the video of her leaving. I mean, she's just walking out of the White House. There's no escort. I mean, she has her security with her, but there's no like White House aide like walking with her.
How was your meeting with the president? Did you give him the Nobel Peace Prize?
Doesn't even really acknowledge the question. Like, did you give him the Nobel Peace Prize? Just walks right up to the. Gets the Kodak, the Kodak moment of hugging all the Venezuelan refugees, right? This all feels very staged to me.
para saludarte.
Dios te bendiga y te dé mucha fuerza. Salud y a todos nosotros que estamos luchando aquí en Venezuela y vamos a seguir luchando por recuperar nuestro país.
Contamos con el presidente Trump para la libertad.
Very strange. Yeah, so here's the snippet that I pulled from the Washington Post did a follow-up article, I think yesterday, but they cited their article from last week. This is, I think, like the final paragraph from yesterday's article. It says, Machado's acceptance of the Nobel Peace Prize appears to have emerged as a point of tension in her relationship with Trump. Two people close to the White House previously told the Post that Trump's reluctance to boost Machado despite her efforts to flatter him stemmed in part from her decision to accept an award the president has openly coveted. Okay, so but just to be clear, like, let me just unpack what we're reading here, because in this information war, you don't know what to trust. The Washington Post, the paper of the CIA, is reporting this. So how can you trust it? But they're citing two White House aides. Now, again, that could be made up. That could be totally fabricated. But it also, I think, would make sense to me that if, previously back in September, when it was announced that she was going to get the Nobel Peace Prize, it was right around the UN. It was right around the UN General Assembly meeting in New York City, because Trump was there right after they announced it. Like, they announced it on like a weekend or something. And then right after they announced it, Trump announces the 20-point peace plan with Gaza, or maybe it was right before. It was one after the other. I can't remember if it was a 20-point peace plan first or this, but in any event, the Nobel Committee looked ridiculous when they did that. And several White House aides told multiple newspapers that they were all pissed that this happened. And remember, I already showed you the letter that it was Marco Rubio in August of 2024 who nominated her for the Nobel Peace Prize in the first place, along with other, Latin American or Hispanic members of Congress, right? So it would make sense to me that Trump would send people to the newspapers, even the enemy newspapers, to telegraph this message that, yeah, we're pissed. The reason that she's not president of Venezuela right now is because she accepted that damn Nobel Peace Prize. What's interesting as well is the day before she comes and visits, Trump is taking questions from reporters, and obviously Venezuela comes up, and this is what he says.
And we'll see how it all works out. I think something will work out. Yeah.
Venezuela, Cabello, the de facto number 2 in Venezuela right now, he seemed pretty reluctant to work with the U.S. And obviously
They just gave us 50 million barrels of oil.
The number 2, the Venezuela security.
I don't know. I know the number 1. We just had a great conversation today. And she's a terrific person. I mean, she's somebody that we've worked with very well. Marco Rubio is dealing with her. I dealt with her this morning. We had a long call. We discussed a lot of things, and I think we're getting along very well with Venezuela. Yes.
Yeah, and so I also discovered this clip, which is worth watching. This obviously rustled my jimmies. This is from, I don't know what the date of this is from, but it's from Venezuela's opposition leaders forging alliances with Milei, Maloney, and President Trump. So this is probably from the past 2 months, I would guess. But this is from Don Jr.'s podcast, her appearance on it. Triggered, I think is what it's called. Listen to what she says here.
Forget about Saudi Arabia. Forget about the Saudis. I mean, we have more oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industry. Venezuela has huge resources, oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do this right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people that are going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, and this aligns with the articles that were being published earlier this year that she was in meetings in London with all of these tycoons, all of these oligarchs, bankers, talking about how they were going to rush in and dump all of this money into Venezuela when she became installed as president. All of this is tracking, right? It's all tracking. Now, Don Jr. looked very uncomfortable when she started talking about the Saudis like that. Forget about Saudi Arabia. Forget about Saudi. You don't need Saudi Arabia. You have us. I think you're getting a little glimpse behind the curtain there that was, among other things they were going to do, that was one of the things they probably were planning on doing if they got the regime change, was boxing out Saudi Arabia and basically just giving us, the United States, all the oil we could possibly want from Venezuela so that we wouldn't even need Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia would become a far less attractive partner without the oil, right? But it's not really about the oil with Saudi Arabia, as we know, as this audience knows. It's about the partnership with MBS. It's about the $1 trillion of investment. It's about his relationships with everybody in his region, but also around the world, the sovereign alliance, all of those things. That's what makes Saudi Arabia an attractive partner. It's the fact that Saudi Arabia will, for the next 50 years at least, is going to have consistent leadership. He's going to be king. And, he's not even king yet. He's the sovereign because his father abdicated that power to him. But once his father dies, and hopefully that won't be for a long time, he will formally become king. And then he will remain king until he dies, which hopefully won't be for a very, very long time. It could be 50 years, right? So you're not going to find that in any other relationship geopolitically, which is why Saudi Arabia, to me, has always been a very strategic and smart partnership to pursue. Now, with all of this said, it looks like we got so there's this company called Bulgare Rescue, and they're the company that back when they were talking about this rescue operation, when they went and rescued her, remember? And then she was like missing in the Atlantic for a few days, and then she suddenly appeared. Is she going to be in Norway in time to accept the prize? No, she's not. Her daughter or sister or whatever, I think it was her daughter, has to accept it on her behalf, right? She has to accept it on her behalf. And then suddenly she appeared like a day later. Oh, I survived the journey. I survived the northern journey from Venezuela. Well, the company that rescued her has released the footage from that rescue, apparently. And maybe this was out sooner, but I never saw it. I just saw that it was being circulated this morning. But I think this is being done now to gin up support for her. But watch how goofy this is.
Maria! Hi! Hi! I am Maria Corina Machado, and I am safe and very grateful to Grateful.
everyone. This is Brian from Rainbow Rescue. Today's December 9th. The boys and I are in Curacao.
Operation Golden Dynamite. And Ash's comment to this when I shared it with the group was, is it called Golden Dynamite because they plan on blowing up the Golden Age? I thought that was pretty good.
Departing on a boat to go get Maria Corina Machado. We've been here, we've been in and out of the region now for over a month, working on Venezuela ops, but this is the big enchilada. So getting her from where she is to where she needs to be is definitely a challenge. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Rabel. Golden Dynamite. We're on boat 2 here at the rally point. Boat 1, we have not heard from in quite some time, but they have no comms. So we're going to sit here for a little bit, and it is what it is. Maria! Hi!
Hi.
Do you have a suitcase or a bag, or what do you have?
Yes, I have a bag.
Is there
Here it comes, Brian. Here it comes.
Guys. Hi, Maria. My name is Brian. Nice to meet you. I got you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Hi, guys.
Okay, underway. Don't do this. Cheers.
So wet and so cold.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I am Maria Corina Machado, and I safe and very grateful to Rainbow.
I mean, guys.
Jackpot. Objective Golden Dynamite. En route Curacao at this time. BLS2.
I mean, this is just laughable. Absolutely laughable. What we just saw there is some of the stupidest shit I've ever seen in my life. Let's just dissect this for a minute. Number one, that guy who was speaking on the camera, apparently I didn't really track this at the time, went on like a media tour after this rescue and appeared like all over MSM talking about, him. I guess he's former special forces and he had a bunch of former special forces guys with him. And they were all talking about how awesome Maria Corina Machado was and how much they respected her. And, you had all these special forces guys basically lending their sword, so to speak, like symbolically to this female would-be leader of Venezuela. The moment where he says, do you have a suitcase or a bag or something? Hi, I'm Brian. Nice to meet you. I mean, it was like an episode of I Love Lucy. It was like Lucy, I Love Lucy. She's going to come with her, her like 1950s suitcase. Oh, yeah, here you go. My name is Maria Corina Machado. I love tacos and burritos. It's like, what are we doing here? This is the goofiest thing I've ever seen in my life. Now let's go look at the map, because geography, it's like that book, The Revenge of Geography, that Jim Quast always suggests. Geography doesn't lie. So Curacao is where the island they said that they were launching from. That's where the boat, because obviously they're in like a small boat. They're in like a little speedboat, right? They didn't cross the Caribbean Sea in that little boat. So they launched out of Curacao. Here's Venezuela. Like they are, let's just measure the distance here. They are 43 miles off the coast of Venezuela. Aruba's right here. One of the reasons I picked the song Kokomo in the name for Delcy Rodriguez, Kokomo Rodriguez, is because like Aruba's in the in the chorus of the song. That's Aruba. I actually didn't even learn this until I was in my 30s, that Aruba is that close to Venezuela. I had a friend who went there on his honeymoon and he told me all about it. But yeah, so like Aruba and Curacao are right there. These are two pretty popular vacation destinations for Americans. And again, this rescue operation happens, I think, in December, if I'm not mistaken. It was either late November or December. And that was when you had like the U.S. Navy allegedly in this area running military operations, all that stuff. And Maria Corina Machado suddenly appears out of the darkness in what looks like a rowboat. It looked like she was in a rowboat. Gets picked up by this little speedboat, this little like fishing boat. They're sitting there yelling at each other in the darkness, and nobody like appears to like say, hey, what's that sound? What are these two boats doing here? You don't have the U.S. Navy showing up. You don't have the Coast Guard showing up. You don't have the Venezuelan military showing up. I mean, isn't this like an active war zone? I mean, aren't there drug cartel boats being blown up? Where are the drug cartels? Aren't the drug cartels going back and forth right here? I mean, none of that makes any sense. And if you think that the U.S. military and the Venezuelan military don't have the technology to pick up these boats on the radar, let alone their satellites, I mean, that's silly. Again, this is like a Disney movie. Like, that's Disney movie level logic. Very, very silly and stupid. Here is the website for this company, Grable Rescue, and it looks like they posted this like immediately after she was rescued. And so here's like the PR campaign they do afterwards. And they give you the background. Here's the heroic response. Here's the guy who was in the video appearing on CNN to give the very real interview and anecdote about how she was rescued. And then they give you like the sob story about the rescue operation, the final dash to safety. Grable Rescue developed and executed a discrete extraction plan under extreme political sensitivity and operational pressure. Given the high visibility of the subject and likelihood of interception through traditional routes, a maritime exfiltration was selected to reduce predictability and minimize exposure. A veteran-led team coordinated intelligence analysis, logistics planning, and secure communications to synchronize movement across multiple domains. The operation unfolded under constant surveillance risk and required precise timing, disciplined execution, and continuous adaptation to changing conditions. Every decision carried consequence. The margin for error was effectively zero. Then the final dash to safety. The maritime extraction was conducted at night under challenging sea conditions with limited visibility and intermittent communications between vessels. Environmental factors included heavy seas and shifting weather, compressed decision-making windows, and increased operational complexity. Despite these constraints, the team maintained and controlled coordination through movement. The Maria Corina Machado was successfully removed from Venezuelan waters and transported onward to safety, concluding the extraction without compromise or escalation. This doesn't make any sense, because if you wanted to run this operation at like a moment in time that would be unpredictable, why would you be doing it the day or two before she's expected to be in Norway to accept her Nobel Peace Prize? Like, that was scheduled out months in advance. Like, here's the day that we're presenting it. Like, there are going to be a lot of world leaders there. We're coordinating schedules. Here's the day. We expect you to be there. Why would you wait until the days leading up to that to do it? Why wouldn't you have extracted her in September or August or July or whatever, right? I mean, couldn't she go live in Norway or Washington, D.C. or wherever? I mean, doesn't make any sense. How does she live in Venezuela for like, hiding out from the cartels and the Maduro regime? So stupid. It's all so dumb. I mean, when Chris Paul talks about the news being produced like Hollywood, like a Hollywood production, this is one of those examples that I would say 100% produced by a Hollywood production studio. That video doesn't even need to be filmed like in open water. That video could be filmed in literally a sound stage, like a giant pool indoors with the lights turned off, It's so silly. So silly. Everything about it just seemed very dumb and very unbelievable. Okay. Then I want to pivot to, let's stay on Venezuela. Let's pivot to, because we have some new news with Venezuela, but I want to just go to this comment that Trump made that I thought was really great. Because the narrative that is evolving now surrounding the situation is that the Democrats, like, what's her name? Pocahontas is saying that this is looking like a kleptocracy, like kleptocratic money, like Trump is setting things up to steal money, right? He's setting things up to him and his buddies in the oil industry are going to come in and extract the wealth from Venezuela and steal it all, right? Well, if that's the case, like if Trump were actually working on behalf of the oil, and that's the rhetoric that all the anti-Trump people, which now includes former Trump supporters, right? People who are anti-Israel, who think Trump's a Jewish puppet, an Israeli puppet. Here's what Trump said to ConocoPhillips during that meeting last week, which occurred while we were live here, so we weren't really able to watch it. But here's what he said about when ConocoPhillips brought up the fact that they lost a bunch of money in Venezuela.
Or what's been lost in Venezuela over the course of the last 25 years. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, and you'll get a lot of your money back. We're going to start with an even plate, though. We're not going to look at what people lost in the past because that was their fault. That was a different president.
That was your fault. It was your fault, ConocoPhillips, that you went and lost money, billions of dollars in Venezuela. What were you doing investing in Venezuela, right? That's what Trump's saying. We're not going to look at that. We're not going to go after Venezuela and ask the government to like pay reparations to you. Even though if Trump actually thought that the money was stolen from them by these companies, that they would be justified in pursuing that would be a great opportunity for Trump to build trust between himself and the oil barons, right? The oil companies, by getting them their money back. I mean, listen to what he says next. But he says, no, we're not doing that. That's your fault.
You're gonna make a lot of money, but we're not going to go back. You left a lot of money behind, I guess.
Yeah. So then he does the humiliation ritual. You left a bunch of money behind, right?
Yes, sir. What number?
12 billion.
How much?
12 billion.
He acts like he can't hear it. He's like, wait, say it again. How much? 12 billion. Speak up. Okay.
Well, it's a good write-off.
It's already been written off.
It's been written. All right. Thank you. You'll make it back one way or the other. You're all going to do very well. I think really very well. Marco,
and then I love the next second is this great scene that I thought was hilarious.
Just gave me a note. Go back to Chevron. They want to discuss something.
Look at Marco's face. He's like, oh my God, you weren't supposed to read that out loud. That's the reason I wrote this down.
Go ahead. I'm going back to Chevron, Mark. Thank you, Marco.
Was there a question, Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead, Marco. What are you saying here?
Mark, if you can update us on operations in the ground and with the appropriate approvals, what you might be able to achieve in the next 12 to 18 months, give us a little view from the ground.
You bet. So today, Chevron has 3,000 employees in 4 different joint ventures in Venezuela today. And over the past 5 to 7 years, they've taken production from about 40,000 barrels a day to 240,000 barrels a day, essentially getting those facilities and that equipment up to standards that would be something that people in the room would be more accustomed to. Given the work we've done with Secretary Wright and Secretary Burgum and even Secretary Bessent, I think we have a path forward here very shortly to be able to increase our liftings from those joint ventures 100%, essentially effective immediately. We are also able to increase our production within our own disciplined investment schemes by about 50% just in the next 18 to 24 months. And that's just leveraging what's on the ground. So to Secretary Rubio's comments about phase 1, this is taking the momentum of improvements we've already made there locally and building on those and creating more momentum for the people of Venezuela.
Do you think you have an advantage being there? You've been there by the skin of your teeth. It's been tough for you to be there. But do you think you have an advantage over the other people in this room by the fact that you are there?
Yeah, I think there are, Mr. President, I think there would be days where it didn't feel like an advantage, and there are days where it does feel like an advantage. But having people on the ground today that care desperately about the people of Venezuela and know how to operate the assets that are there, that is a definite advantage today.
Would you say the best locations are available, or would you say the best locations are already sort of worked, even though they're in very bad shape? The best locations for finding oil, the best locations for oil.
There are more opportunities than not, Mr. President. With 300 billion barrels of reserves and resources in country, there are lots of opportunities for many companies.
Will you be building new, or will you be using the old infrastructure that you have?
Yeah, today it's a little bit of a mix, but today it's mostly us taking the equipment of today, getting it to the standards that we are accustomed to your comments about making it how it should be today. Most of the investments that we've been making are about getting it up to our standards.
Well, I think you're going to make an investment, but you're going to get your money back very quickly, and that's part of our thing. We're going to have you get your money back fast, and then you'll give a lot to Venezuela and to the United States after that. Okay, so you'll be in good shape. Could I ask Harold Hamm to say a few words? He's been a friend of mine for a long time.
Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of really good little clips from this, but there's a lot that I want to get to in the show, so we're not going to watch too much of that. But I probably will circle back to this meeting because there were a lot of things that happened in this meeting that I think are going to be valuable to reference in the future. But I want to bring up the fact that, we did Hugo Chavez on Monday on the Book of Trump, and look at the schedule and have scheduled Oak to come talk about Yugoslavia in early February. So rather than to go to the Orange Revolution, which is what I was going to do next, I think it makes sense to just go ahead and do a part 2 on Hugo Chavez, because we didn't even get to like the nationalization of the oil industry or anything like that. So we'll go a little deeper into that. But my understanding, like looking at everything and looking into this, is, as I explained on that show, Hugo Chavez comes to power because George Bush and all of the IMF and all of these oligarchs, the oil companies, were just stealing all of the wealth from Venezuela. They were just, all of the PDVSA, the state oil company, was laundering all the money out, embezzling all the money, and stealing it from the Venezuelan people. It wasn't even the rightful money they were supposed to be getting. They weren't getting, right? And that's why everyone in Venezuela was poor. And then Hugo Chavez comes into power, changes that dynamic, simply just directs the money back to the Venezuelan population, and uses it to build banks and social welfare programs. Things that a system that many people would describe as socialism, but actually not that different from what Donald Trump's talking about with the tariff program, right? Right now, all of the wealth that the U.S. economy is generating, or a lot of it, is being extracted, sent overseas. And so now Trump is putting tariffs in place to recapture that wealth and then redirect it into the U.S. Treasury. And then it's going to be used, hopefully, to relieve taxes. Like instead of paying taxes, we can depend on the tariff system, like President McKinley used to do 120 years ago. And among other things, we can invest in major projects. It's much easier to spend the money if the money is not being extracted from the people. The essence of socialism, communism, Marxism, Bolshevism, the evils of it effectively is that you're extracting wealth. You're stealing money from one class of people, whether it's the middle class or the elites or whoever, and then you're redistributing the wealth to other people. That's what socialism is, right? If the money is coming as a natural byproduct of business in the form of tariffs, whether when you're talking about the United States and the access to our markets, which are the greatest markets in the world, or in the case of a place like Venezuela or Saudi Arabia, selling the natural resources of that land, oil, and just getting the profits from that, and then taking the profits and investing it into the society, that's a different form of socialism. You can still call it socialism, but it's not wealth redistribution, right? It's something very different. So when Hugo Chavez nationalizes the oil, which formally happens in 2009, fairly close to the end of his life, he dies in early 2012 of cancer, and he was away. He was in and out of cancer treatment for a year or two before that. That's when really the apparatus truly mobilizes against him in all of Venezuela, and they crashed the price of oil in 2014. Crashing the price of oil dries up the cash flow of their government, that whole social welfare program. And then when you couple that with sanctions and other external instruments they used against it, that's why their economy caved. But the story that we were told at the time was that Nicolas Maduro, Hugo Chavez's vice president, who Chavez handpicked to be his successor, he came in and imposed all these new socialist policies, which then destroys the economy. That's not what happened. He kept the exact same policies that Hugo Chavez had that made their country wealthy. And it was the crashing of the price of oil in 2014 that destroys their economy. And then the fact that, as these people are admitting, these oil companies did not upgrade, like take their profits and upgrade their equipment. All of their equipment in oil extracting infrastructure is like archaic. It's all ancient, right? Now, obviously, I'm not on the ground. I'm not there. I'm not involved in the behind the scenes stuff. It's possible that that's all a result of, the nationalization of the oil industry by Venezuela. There's obviously corruption that was happening in their government. We've covered all of the different corruption sweeps and probes that Maduro has been doing, and we will cover that more in depth on the Book of Trump. But it seems to me that if you have these oil companies not investing in their oil infrastructure because they're no longer getting the full benefit of the embezzlement and the extraction that was happening prior to Hugo Chavez, that would explain why their infrastructure is like decayed, right? So now that Maduro has been removed, ostensibly, right? He's been taken off the top, but his regime is still complete. His government's still totally in power. Trump is now saying, okay, oil companies, we expect you to come in and just rebuild everything. Like, let's go make money. Y'all want to make money, right? Well, that's not their only priority. Their priority is also political leverage and power and those kind of dynamics. And that's why you have ExxonMobil and others saying, whoa, we don't think we actually want to, we don't feel comfortable going back yet because the Maduro people are still running the show. We don't feel comfortable. And Trump's response to that is, okay, F you, then you're out. You're not going to make any money then. Very interesting dynamic. But the reason I lay all that out is because we now have this story, which is from CNN, why the Trump administration is holding millions of dollars from Venezuelan oil sales in a Qatari bank. And I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. There we go. Caught myself. Hundreds of millions of dollars of that the U.S. is raising from the sale of Venezuelan oil is being sequestered in Qatar. It's an indirect path that could speed the flow of much needed money to Venezuela, but it also raises questions about the transparency surrounding those funds. The Trump administration confirmed the first sale of Venezuelan oil Wednesday, saying it raised $500 million. It is just the first of numerous sales expected to bring in billions of dollars in the months and potentially years to come. The funds were sent to Qatar rather than being held in U.S. banks or sent directly to Venezuela, according to a former administration official familiar with the matter. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Newsmax Wednesday evening that the cash from the oil sales would start to flow into Venezuela as soon as Thursday. Venezuelan banks have started advertising cash, suggesting that the oil proceeds have arrived in the country, two sources with knowledge of Venezuela's financial system said. I want you to think about what that paragraph just told you. So the money that they're making, they just made $500 million off the first sale of Venezuelan oil. We, the United States, just bought $500 million of oil from Venezuela. And according to the regime, according to the uniparty enemy press, who is trying to make this look as evil as they possibly can, even they're admitting the money is now flowing into Venezuelan banks, and those banks are advertising that they have cash on hand now, which means if they have cash on hand, they can lend money for people to start businesses, buy homes, etc. Right? How banks are supposed to function, right? That's what drives economic growth, by the way, guys, is, in the economic models that we've been trapped in for the past however many centuries, especially the past century, is the banks lending money and easing up their lending standards. That's what turns on the economy. Now that's happening, that they're selling oil again, which they weren't able to do before this. It says Venezuela has been sanctioned by Western governments across the globe, essentially cutting off the global banking system for years. Its authoritarian government seized oil assets over the past decades for which foreign energy companies have demanded compensation. And Trump just said, you're not getting compensation for that, by the way. President Trump has complained about Venezuela stealing American oil assets there, but he has also said it's important that proceeds from the oil sales directly benefit Venezuela and prevent those with claims on Venezuelan oil revenue from getting access to the money that the U.S. is now generating from those sales. I want to read that again. President Trump has complained about Venezuela stealing American assets there, oil assets, but he has also said that it's important that the proceeds from these oil sales directly benefit Venezuela and prevent those with claims on Venezuelan oil revenue, meaning, these oil oligarchs who are openly saying that they are owed damages from the money that they've lost. That ConocoPhillips guy, right? ExxonMobil as well. They're not getting that money, right? From getting access to the money that the U.S. is now generating from those sales. Trump issued an executive order on Friday in which he said such attempts to put liens, garnishments, or other legal judgments claiming those funds are blocked. The order said that if the funds were not free from such legal entanglements, it would, quote, substantially interfere with our critical efforts to ensure economic and political stability in Venezuela. Placing the money into an account in Qatar, potentially out of the reach of Western businesses and creditors who have claims for money they say they're owed, is one way to achieve the administration's goals. Says the fact that Venezuela's creditors could show such payments would pose a problem for both that country and the Trump administration. Quote, it's a real big problem. Venezuela owes money to everyone, said one expert on foreign relations in Venezuela who spoke on the condition of anonymity to speak freely. The expert said that Qatar has long served as a facilitator between the United States and the Venezuelan government, even before the U.S. seizure of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro opened up more direct communications between the two governments. Again, that right there, that line, that's the sovereign alliance, guys. Remember who was the negotiator, who was the facilitator, the broker between Colombian President Gustavo Petro and the cartels, the cocaine cartels back in September? Qatar. And then what did Petro say right after that? Hey, world, he said this at the UN, maybe Qatar could serve as the intermediary between Trump and Maduro. And then we learned a month later from that article that we read the other day from Miami Herald in October, we learned that Qatar has actually been involved since the beginning of Trump's term. Since the very beginning of Trump's second term, Qatar has been involved in all of this. It says, and now they're telling you that they're now the middleman in making sure that these oligarchs, these cartel, like regime cartel members, figures are not coming in and using their regulators inside the Western banking system, which is totally run by the cartels, in bed with not only the corporate cartels, but also the actual drug cartels, making sure that they don't come in and use their ability to, seize bank accounts, that sort of thing, to steal the money. It says, and other experts told CNN that Qatari banks have served a similar intermediary role during the Biden administration when it allowed some funds from oil sales to again flow to Iran during a loosening of the sanctions on that country. You remember when Biden loosened the sanctions on Iran and everyone was like, oh my God, he's in bed with Iran. I think that this is all sovereign alliance stuff, I think, happening with the framing that it's Biden, of course. So blame Biden. Don't blame Trump. Blame Biden. Trump said, this is actually my second presidency, the Biden presidency, but I don't want any credit for any of this stuff. So Trump said. John plays that clip all the time. Let's see. The Qatari banks holding the funds have been instructed to auction the money to Venezuelan banks, giving priority to food, medicine, and small businesses. So there you go. Small businesses, meaning they're going to lend money so people can go open up shops, people can go renovate buildings, get the economy up and running. I've been involved on the ground level in those negotiations all the time, from the construction side and from the architecture side. We always have to be involved in helping the people qualify for their loans. We have to show construction budgets. We have to show design plans, all that stuff, right? So the banks feel comfortable in what they're investing their money in, basically. According to Alejandro Grisanti, founding director of Eco Analytica, a Latin and South American consultant that operates in Venezuela, among other countries, that money will be collected by the Central Bank of Venezuela and allocated according to the requirements set by the United States, Grisanti said. Now, remember, the Central Bank of Venezuela does not operate the same way that the central banks of Europe and the United States do. They are not under the control of the Rothschilds. That's actually one of the reasons Venezuela was on the short list of countries that need to be overthrown, is because their central bank is operated by their national government. It's not operated by the transnational banking cartel. Bassett told Newsmax that proceeds will fund Venezuela's government operations, security, and food provisions. The White House would not comment directly on the funds going to a bank in Qatar before they are paid out to Venezuela. As a reminder, Venezuela has been isolated from international banking for years, said an administration official speaking on background. As the administration moves quickly at President Trump's direction, we are reviewing the existing legal parameters and restrictions, transparency concerns, but Trump's executive order should have prevented the problem of creditors blocking the flow of necessary funds to Venezuela, the experts said. The fact that funds are being held in Qatar not only places it further outside of U.S. legal challenges to that order, it also allows for less U.S. transparency of the movement of cash. Quote, unless there's some public plan that is going to come out and say, here's the government structure for this pot of money, who's going to have control, here's the various anti-corruption, anti-money laundering controls that are going to be put in place. This is being set up as some kind of a slush fund, said the expert who asked for anonymity. It's very troubling, quote unquote. That doesn't suggest that the Trump administration is going to try to do anything nefarious with the money, but there are legitimate concerns that Venezuelan acting president Delcy Rodriguez will use funds flowing back to Venezuela to continue to pay off the corrupt parts of the government structure, including paramilitary groups and drug cartels, to maintain control of the country, according to the expert. Some critics of the Trump administration are questioning Trump's motivation to send the money to Qatar. Quote, there is no basis in law for a president to set up an offshore account that he controls so that he can sell assets seized by the American military, said Senator Elizabeth Warren, a Massachusetts Democrat, in a comment to Semaphore, which first reported the money going to Qatar. That is precisely a move that a corrupt politician would be attracted to. And by the way, Semaphore is the outlet that reported that story earlier this year of Maria Corina Machado going to London and meeting with all the world bankers about how they were going to carve up Venezuela when she got back into power. Semaphore, I think, is a CIA. I think that's like a very newly created CIA blog, like Substack blog or whatever. So I plugged this article and all of the related information into the same AI thread that I've been running for the past week, and asked it to analyze how it feeds into all the theories that I've been explaining to it for the past week. And here's what it came back with. It said, let me pull this up. I asked it, I was like, how does this relate to everything that I've theorized above? I said, look at this article and analyze how it relates to everything I've theorized above. It says, the CNN referenced development on the U.S.'s first Venezuelan oil sale and Qatar bank accounts fit tightly into a broader pattern you've been theorizing, and in several ways validates core elements of your hypothesis about sanctions, oil revenue, offshore accounts, and enforcement dynamics, while also adding new complexity. And then it goes to give a structured analysis of how this article relates to my overarching analysis and theory. Offshore accounts and neutral jurisdictions. It says it matches the pattern I've discussed about funds being placed in offshore to avoid U.S. court claims and credit seizures. Choosing Qatar aligns with wider precedents for sanctioned states using neutral banking jurisdictions to keep revenue accessible while avoiding seizure. Reflects my idea that revenue flows can be centrally controlled and monitored, essentially acting as sanctions management mechanisms rather than an open market transaction. Number two, connection to sanctions enforcement and legal exposure. Trump signed executive orders blocking courts and creditors from seizing all oil revenue held in U.S. accounts. Some proceeds being held offshore specifically avoid seizure risk from litigation and creditors. This supports your thesis that sanctions and litigation lead to creative financial structures that can complicate enforcement and civil recovery. It shows how asset control strategies can morph into sovereign revenue management, not just sanctions and invasion enforcement. Instead of simply lifting sanctions and letting revenue flow directly back into Venezuela, the U.S. strategy is to control how and where the money moves, consistent with earlier enforcement layering decisions. Then it talks about political dynamics, interim governments, power dynamics, corruption, oversight, and skepticism, broader strategic insignificance. And then the key synthesis is confirms the centrality of oil revenue into Venezuelan power transitions, shows how sanctions can morph into revenue management tools, highlights new opacity and potential corruption risks, signals a phase where enforcement, not just sanctioning, about how money moves and is dispersed. What's interesting about all of this is, to me, is that I think the core of my thesis is that why was Maduro removed? Well, not only do you get the benefit of the optics of that, like Trump did the thing that all the neocons wanted them to do, which got everyone very hot and bothered for the next regime change operation, exposed a lot of people who I think are just all about the regime change operations. But also, more importantly, going back to Matthias Krull, who the German Swiss banker who was arrested in Miami in 2018, who was the key guy that was laundering all the money that was being embezzled out of PDVSA. Remember, they went and they they flipped him. He said, I will 100% cooperate. I confess to everything. I plead guilty to all charges. I will cooperate in full in exchange for clemency on my prison term. And they took off 65% of his prison term was reduced. And then as a result of what he gave them, they went and seized all these assets from a number of banks, primarily Swiss banks, primarily Credit Suisse. And that led to the collapse of Credit Suisse in 2023, which then had broader geopolitical implications in the financial markets and money leaving Switzerland as a result, because the Swiss government stepped in, forced UBS, another bank, to buy Credit Suisse, which at a loss to the shareholders in Credit Suisse, one of whom was the Saudis. The Saudis then stepped up and said, wait a minute, we just bought 10% of Credit Suisse, and now we're losing all of our money. We're pulling all of our money out of Swiss bank accounts entirely, in Switzerland in general. And then a bunch of other people followed suit. So there was a big domino effect that happened from this. But we go back to Matthias Krull. When the sanctions were imposed after Matthias Krull starts cooperating, those sanctions froze everything in place. And what the AI was telling me and speculating was that once the sanctions get lifted, which is starting to happen now, and that money starts flowing again, there's an automated process where these SARs, these suspicious activity reports, are going to start self-generating, because there are going to be discrepancies in how the money is now flowing out and flowing across the economic sectors. And when these discrepancies become very obvious, the regulators are going to be raising their hand and saying, hey, somebody needs to come look at this. And suddenly we're going to start seeing, I think, banks getting more being exposed. At the same time, you can then resume the discovery from the civil suit from the case that was filed by PDVSA in March of 2018. And that civil discovery, I think, is going to lead to even more exposure of how these banks were not only looting and plundering countries like Venezuela, but also that these banks, commodity traders, brokerages, oil companies, how they're all also in bed with the cartels, and they're laundering their money too. Like the actual cartels, the drug cartels, the people they say that Maduro is in bed with. So this is all fascinating to me. The fact that Trump's using Qatar is pure signal. That is sovereign alliance, 100%. The fact that the Democrats are now, the Uniparty is projecting that Trump is actually doing the thing that they were doing before Hugo Chavez came along, and that this is going to be kleptocracy. This is going to be a slush fund. This is going to be embezzling and stealing, right? More eyeballs are going to be on that money now than there would have been if Trump had just let the money flow organically. Now that he's created this third party, even more people are going to be looking to get Trump, because all these reporters, they want to get Trump. They want to find that smoking gun of Trump being a corrupt politician. And I think what they're going to discover is that it's actually the cartels that were plundering Venezuela with George Bush, with Ronald Reagan, with Bill Clinton, with Barack Obama, with George W. Bush, and everybody else. So, accelerate. That's really, I think, my takeaway from it all. All right, so and I'm going to be on the narrative again on Sunday night. We'll probably talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll obviously do Hugo Chavez on Monday night. So there'll be more opportunities to talk about this. Let's go and do an ad break, and then we will come back. Geopolitics with Ghost.
Get you some of that beard oil.
Now that I'm alone at the close-up, do you see how awesome my beard looks right now?
I use the beard oil every single day. First thing, comes out feeling all silky smooth. I take the dropper and I manually apply the oil directly to my mustache. Nice and, oh man, I love it. And then I do drops all throughout the hair, and then I just rub it all in. And then I top it off with the tallow stick on the face.
I feel like I have to grow a beard just to try this beard oil. It sounds
Do it, Jay.
amazing.
It's all from softdisclosure.com, and the best part about it is you will be supporting Badlands Media, Annie from Willow and Farms, and basically 3 of Annie's neighbors. So that's 5 total American companies that you'd be supporting with one purchase.
I have been using the Soft Disclosure scentless beard oil every day after the shower. It looks unkempt, but it feels silky smooth. I want to look a little wild and unapproachable, but for the woman I trust, she'll be like, oh, it's actually kind of soft. He is approachable after all. Otherwise, stay away. And Soft Disclosure will help you too with that if that's the very specific vibe you're going for.
That is very specific, yes. You guys are supporting American businesses when you do that. It's absolutely incredible, and you get a great, great product.
Hey there, Earthlings. I'm here on the streets of New York to tell you about something that's literally out of this world. You know, traveling between dimensions really takes it out of you, but I've found the perfect solution. MyShroom Vibe can now be your Shroom Vibe. Elevate your frequency. Get microdose capsules, gummies, and chocolate bars at myshroomvibe.com. Use code BADLANDS for 10% off your order. Trust me, galaxy hopping demands balance, and ours comes from Mother Nature. Organic, not synthetic. It's the real deal. Cy Lee, if you know what I mean. Check it out. Your frequency will thank you. Visit myshroomvibe.com. Organic goodness, not synthetic. Use code BADLANDS.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. I left the word life to bring for hell. That's a mighty long time, but I'm here to say, punch
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Geopolitics with Ghost. Sorry for the rough start. Today is January 16th, 2026. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick. The Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. This is hour 2 of Geopolitics with Ghost. I don't even know if we're live on Rumble right now. We were having issues earlier. It looks like there's a lot of people watching over there, so hit the thumbs up if you can hear me. And if you're on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up as well. If you're on X, please share the stream. Appreciate all of y'all being here. I wanted to go to, before we pivot completely away from Venezuela, I wanted to go to an interview that I caught of Steve Bannon with Eric Prince. And it's relevant because, remember, Eric Prince, as we covered on one of the shows I was on, I can't even remember at this point, he met in 2019 secretly with Delcy Rodriguez, right, who's now the president. So the fact that Eric Prince, and that was Bloomberg speculating, this is November 2019, speculated that was Trump trying to establish a back channel with Maduro, which I think already existed. But the fact that Eric Prince met with the person who's now president makes his insight into Venezuela interesting and certainly worth considering. I don't take anything any one person says totally to heart, because how can you trust anything these days? But let's just listen to what he was talking about today with Bannon.
In Venezuela, I know you've been pushing this for a while, but I gotta start with the Persian situation. They're trying to pre-position assets, but President Trump saying, "Hey, listen."
And this is going to transition us into our next topic, which is Iran. Obviously, that's the other big geopolitical event happening right now.
Give me a target set that looks like we can come in at the end and basically finish this thing and let the people take it. I don't know. I don't want to do a massive bombing campaign and 6 months later have the Ayatollah, killing people in dungeons, and they can't do that. And it's broken the hearts of Tel Aviv, Levin, and Lindsey Graham's so broken up. He's flying. He ain't going home to South Carolina. Hey, and I just talked about the Canadians taking care of the Carney problem. They got to throw that guy out of office. People in South Carolina, remember, Lady Lindsey represents you to the world because he's a global figure. Eric Prince, your thoughts, sir?
Look, Gaza is not our problem. I agree with you on defending the Christian parts of Jerusalem or the Christian parts of the West Bank even. This is going to get more tribal if the insanity continues the way it is. I think it'd be great to get rid of the mullahs, but again, it's not our problem. There's a lot of wealth, right? They call LA Tarantulas because there's so much Iranian wealth out there. Why don't they get together, spend money, support their people that are oppressed, and free them? If my home state of West Michigan was suddenly invaded, you can imagine that I would do all possible to defend my people. And I'm certainly not with the globalists on this one. I'm with you, Steve.
Eric, talk to me about also in Venezuela. Now we're talking about the oil assets. A lot of controversy about that. It's basically from Guyana to Venezuela to the Gulf of America to parts of Mexico to Texas, and that huge arc. I think you have, don't you have, and I'm not even counting the natural gas in Pennsylvania or what we got in North Dakota, because Pennsylvania in and of itself is the Saudi Arabia natural gas. But just in that arc down there, where the Chinese, the PLA Navy and the Russians, they're all running things, at least right now. Isn't that like 10x the world's oil supply? We got all the oil we need to control the world's markets and just to make sure that we have our own national security, sir?
There's been some noise about private security, PMCs being by the U.S. government to help in Venezuela. I think the best solution there is to let Venezuela hire the private sector. The problem is if the Department of War or the Department of State contracting bureaucracy tries to hire the capacity they need in Venezuela, it will be another Afghanistan or Iraq type debacle, because you will have a brigade of lawyers that deploy and second guess everything. Delcy Rodriguez may not be a saint, but if she's the one that's going to be the interim president, she has to have the apex capability to actually put down, because you're in a pause right now after the effect of removing Maduro. There's cartels, there's the ELN, which is the local FARC variant. There's Iranians, there's Cubans. There's lots of the colectivos, all the neighborhood gangs. They're all kind of laying low somewhat, just like in Baghdad or in Kabul after the fall. Back in 2001 and in 2003. But then within 3 or 4 months, total freaking chaos. There needs to be an apex force that is accountable in Venezuela, that is capable, the most capable. And if you don't have that, it is going to be a debacle, and the place will be uninvestable, because oil companies don't want their people kidnapped. And this is not, the kind of security that Department of War is thinking about is gate guards. They want you want a capability that will actually smash these narcos.
And it can't be U.S. troops. As the vice president, the woman in charge now, she's Tony Soprano's daughter. Their family's history, because they were correct. They're mobsters way before Chavez and these guys showed up. Their business model was kidnapping U.S. oil executives and holding them for ransom, which the oil companies, oil people, and they paid it, right? So they know the business. They got the model down there, right?
That is correct. So again, to keep Venezuela from becoming Haiti, which Venezuela has more weapons, significantly more natural resources. If you don't put real capability in there quickly, because it's not like you're going to be doing close air support for the oil companies from a Nimitz class carrier. And that's not happening. I'd say the threshold of the U.S. military ever being involved there again is exceedingly high, other than maybe a strike against one specific gang leader. So again, you have to deploy real capability, not the kind of capability that DOD or DOS contracting is ever going to be comfortable doing. Let the Venezuelan government hire what they need to do.
Not to the Haitian situation.
Okay, and then they pivot to Haiti, so we don't need to talk about that. Interesting insight from Eric Prince here, and let me just clarify something, because some of the things he said, it's hard to hear or process. He said, when he says there's a very high threshold for the U.S. military to be involved again, what he's saying is that in order for the U.S. military to get involved in Venezuela again, there would have to be basically like a regional war. Like we're not just going to go send another carrier down there and sit off the coast and just hang out for no reason, right? Because the first time I heard it, I thought he was saying that that the likelihood of the U.S. military still being involved down there was high. What he said is the threshold for the U.S. military being involved down there again is very high, meaning that there's a high bar to clear for us to get involved again. The comparison to Kabul and Iraq 20 years ago is really interesting, where the State Department went in and just started hiring a bunch of paramilitary groups, and that just turned the whole place into a gangland, basically. When he talks about the Venezuela sitting in the driver's seat, Delcy Rodriguez sitting in the driver's seat, again, when Chris Paul says that Donald Trump and Steve Bannon are more often communicating with the enemy than they are with the support base, like MAGA, I agree with him. I think Bannon is constantly communicating with the enemy. The day before, I'm not going to play the 8-minute clip, but the day before, he had on Jack Posobiec before Maria Corina Machado went to the White House, and they were like pumping her tires. Like they were like talking about how her gift, Marquise de Lafayette, she cited him in some gift she gave him, whatever. But then they talked about the regime change in Iran and how that was not actually regime change. The theme here, by the way, and maybe I should have started the show with this, is that we didn't get regime change in Venezuela, and we're not getting regime change in Iran. And I hope everyone takes that away from my show today. Even though that's what the signal seems to be from the mainstream media, and depending on how you interpret Trump, his rhetoric, that's what Trump appears to have been saying for the past month. He's not really, actually. He just is doing the WrestleMania thing. But then at the last minute, he always steps off the rug, and then the warmongers like Lindsey Graham fall flat on their face. If Delcy Rodriguez is in charge of hiring private military contractors to come in there and defend Venezuela, the potential of us seeing the Wagner Group down there is actually kind of high. They would be really interesting if the Wagner Group, now I don't know if that, the optics of that might be a little too intense this soon, but we could see the Wagner Group come down to Venezuela and Delcy Rodriguez contract with them. That would be a monumental pivot, a monumental milestone in the Sovereign Alliance story arc. And finally, some of those groups that he ran through when he was talking about all the different bad guys who might still be hanging out in Caracas, laying low for 3 or 4 months, waiting for the news cycle to move away, for the U.S. military to move out of the Caribbean. They've already moved one. There's 2 carrier strike groups down there. The Abraham Lincoln, they moved from the Eastern Mediterranean to the Caribbean back on November 18th. Now they're sending the Abraham Lincoln back to the Eastern Mediterranean, and all the neocons are sitting there after, coming down off their high, like, oh, we didn't really quite get regime change in Iran. Now they're starting to get high again. They're busting out the drugs, they're busting out the spoons, they're going back for more, because they think that now that there's a carrier strike group moving back to the Mediterranean, we might actually get the war with Iran. However, it's going to take a week for it to get there. So a week in this news cycle, that's ancient history. I'm not even sure if we'll be talking about Iran in a week, we're barely even talking about Venezuela anymore. At least we are on this show. But the ELN was one of the groups he mentioned. The ELN, as I discussed on this show before, is the National Liberation Army, created in 1963, 1964, inspired by Pablo Escobar and Che Guevara. And the purpose, according to a press conference held by Gustavo Petro a year ago, February of 2025, he held a press conference where he and his generals said the ELN is run by the Sinaloa cartels and the Mexican government. And the ELN is actually exists and operates in Central and Northern South America, the Bolivarian region, in order to secure the routes for running, like the land routes for the cocaine and other drugs up through Central America to Mexico, so then it can be delivered to the United States. So the ELN does not work for Maduro, and it doesn't work for Gustavo Petro. It works for the enemies of Maduro and the enemies of Gustavo Petro, and they've been at war with those guys for several years now, ever since Petro came into office in 2022. So again, the presentation by Eric Prince and Bannon is that the ELN, is like this Maduro faction that needs to be dealt with. It's the opposite. And then when Bannon talks about Delcy Rodriguez being Tony Soprano's daughter, we're going to cover that for sure on Monday on the Book of Trump. Her father was tortured and executed by the CIA. So she has a chip on her shoulder because of that. And I don't think that story is actually accurately being presented here, but we'll cover that on Monday. She was part of the Hugo Chavez government. And then, of course, she was the VP for Maduro. The fact that he didn't arrest her means that she wasn't part of the kleptocracy that's connected to George Bush and the CIA and all that stuff, the transnational banks. So anyway, let's jump over to Iran because we're running out of time here. I really do want to get to some important stuff. But before we go to Iran, there's a small story that we can hit real quick that'll be easier to cover, and that is Mark Carney. And if you've been following my shows and you've been following primarily Breaking History, Matt Arrett, my Canadian co-host from Breaking History, who has been all over Mark Carney. He, like a year ago, released a documentary about him that he made, which was amazing, that really opened up my mind's eye for what Mark Carney is. Mark Carney is basically a central banker king. He's held like all the prominent positions in the central banking world, the Bank of London, the Bank of Canada, a few others. And he, in our estimation, was installed as the leader of Canada in order to combat President Trump and stop President Trump from imposing the golden age, imposing the MAGA agenda, and basically, along with the Sovereign Alliance, bringing about the golden age. One of the enemies of MAGA and the populist uprising. And when people say, patriots are in control and all the bad guys are gone, all the bad guys are defeated. There are no bad guys, guys. It's all under control. These are all just puppets who are just up there doing theater on behalf of Donald Trump to entertain all of you, for the next couple of years until all this stuff can be rolled out. That's not true. Those are total misinterpretations, in my opinion, of what is actually happening. And here is the signal for that. Let's see. Where's that Carney story? Stand by for processing. I'm here. I'm not frozen, guys. I'm just wondering why my Carney story is not here. Come on, Carney. Too many tabs open. I can pull it up from my X account or my social media because I know I have it there. All right. So from the Financial Times of London, which, as Bannon often says, is the paper of record for the globalists, for the World Economic Forum, for the Davos crowd, right? Here's from today. It says, can Mark Carney Trump-proof Canada's economy? After several decades of closer integration with the U.S., the country's prime minister is pushing large infrastructure projects and looking for new markets. Hours after he won a remarkable election campaign in April, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered a stark warning about how the country's neighbor and closest ally was becoming its greatest threat. Quote, America wants our land, our resources, our water, and our country, he said to raucous cheers. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen. Carney's response is beginning to take shape, facing the Trump administration's tariffs and jibes about Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. The prime minister is trying to put in place a new model that would reduce dependence on the U.S. and reimagine the economic geography of the country. 3.5 decades after Canada signed up to NAFTA, a North American trade deal that deepened its already close economic ties with its southern neighbor, Carney is searching for a plan B that looks beyond the U.S. On Friday, he will meet with President Xi Jinping in Beijing. So I'm sorry, this story I think is from yesterday. The first official Canadian visit to China in close to a decade, in a bid to reinvigorate trade with the Asian superpower. Riding Canada's wave of newfound patriotism, Carney has launched a nation-building infrastructure agenda, including a high-speed rail project and port expansions that will be used to transport abundant natural resources to new markets. While around 3/4 of Canada's exports currently go to the U.S., the government wants to reduce this to half. All right, so let's look at his commentary, because I think his commentary kind of tells us the story of his commentary is really the truth, and his commentary is right here. Man, just waiting for this thing to load. Internet has been really, really shoddy. I understand like Verizon was down yesterday. Most of the country did not have the internet. Let's see, Carney. And I just saw there was a quote from Trump that he just gave on Machado. We're gonna have to go back and listen to that. All right, so here's one of the videos that I wanted us to watch.
Visit of a Canadian Prime Minister. Mine is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order. Mine is the first.
Yeah, so obviously that language is very familiar to all of us. If you recall George Bush Sr. saying that in the early 90s. So he was asked to clarify this by a reporter later, and here's what he said.
News. Yesterday, when you met with Premier Lee, one of the things you said in the public remarks was this partnership, Canada and China, this new partnership sets us up well for the new world order. What did you mean by that? What is the new world order?
Well, it's a great question, Brian, because I think the world is still determining what that order is going to be. And let's be clear what we're talking about first and foremost, which is what is going to govern global trade? What is the role of the WTO going to be? How important are bilateral deals such as the one we're developing, plurilateral deals, if I can use that term, Trans-Pacific Partnership, potential linkages between Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU? Where is financial regulation, payment system regulation going to fit into that? All of these aspects, I use fancy words like the architecture, the multilateral system that has been developing these is being eroded, to use a polite term, undercut, use another term. So the question is, what gets built in that place? How much of a patchwork is it? How much is it just on a bilateral basis? Or where do like-minded countries in certain areas? So like-minded countries, just to be clear, doesn't mean you agree on everything. Aspects, for example, on digital trade or agricultural trade, climate finance as another area, to move into areas of geostrategy, geosecurity, you will have different coalitions that are formed. So what this partnership does is in areas, for example, of clean energy, conventional energy, agriculture, as we were just talking about, and financial services, which we've talked less about, but the evolution of the global financial system, the role of the renminbi over time, the evolution of cross-border payments. I know it all sounds very dry, except for your organization, which I think takes an interest in it. These are important elements of how the system is going to work. And look, the expectation is that rather than these being developed necessarily through the IMF, WTO, and other multilateral organizations, it is going to be coalitions that develop them, not for the world, but for subsectors of the world.
So, and by the way, Jessica texted me. She said that we are live on Rumble. I think she pulled some wizardry out of her hat. So thank you, Jessica. Hit the thumbs up, guys, if we are live. Very, very grateful. Welcome to the show. A lot of fancy words he uses there. Multilateralism, multipluralism, like these are all just words for globalism. All right. He mentioned reviving the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which the Republicans were passing. Ron DeSantis voted yes on it 2 days. I think it was 2 days either before or after Trump came down the escalator in June of 2015. Ron DeSantis voted yes on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which basically would have sent the rest of our manufacturing base to Asia, to China. He wants to revive that. He talked about climate change financing. He talked about the development of the global banking infrastructure, the global banking system, right? Think about what we just went through with Venezuela. That why is Trump putting this money in a Qatari bank? Why? So the global banking system can't put its grubby hands on it, because the way the global banking system works is that your money isn't safe anywhere. If you are an enemy of the regime, they will come after your assets no matter where you live, no matter where you keep your money, they will get to you. That is the entire reason that G Money has a platform. The entire reason G Money does what he does is because he says, pull all your money out of the banks and buy Bitcoin, because they can't touch Bitcoin no matter what. No matter what, they can put you in prison. They can. The worst thing they could possibly do is kill you, because if they kill you, they'll never get your seed phrase and they'll never get your Bitcoin. So they literally can never get your money if your money's in Bitcoin. That's G Money's argument, and he's right. That Carney here is talking about further developing the global banking system to prevent basically what Trump's doing right now, which is putting the money in bank accounts that the global banking system can't get to evade sanctions, to evade the backlash of the cabal. Very nefarious stuff. Very nefarious stuff. But you know, Carney, this is exactly what Matt Ehret said Carney is, and we just need to keep an eye on that. All right, I'm only going to be on for like another 15 minutes or so because I got to take my dog to the vet. So we will talk more about Iran on Tuesday. I'll make sure to make that a point, since we're probably going to be discussing Venezuela. I mean, we will be discussing Venezuela on Monday, and we'll probably be discussing everything on Sunday with Burning Bright. But let's pivot to Iran real quick. So it looked like we were going to get a war with Iran. You know, the protesters in the street, and then all of a sudden this happened. This is 2 days ago. President Trump in the White House. Trump was threatening, if protesters are dying, we're going in and we're intervening on their behalf. And in my opinion, that was Trump basically ginning up the rhetoric, escalating everything, saying, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then the provocateurs on the ground in Iran were like kicking up to the next level. We're going to see some of those videos of, decapitating police officers, burning hundreds of ambulances, mosques, lighting government buildings on fire, violence in the streets, all this stuff being done by the protesters. And even Trump is saying that that's what's happening. But the inflection point was there was a narrative out there that they were going to start hanging people. I think it was on Tuesday. They said tomorrow the hangings begin. And then on Wednesday, Trump came out and said this.
We have been notified and pretty strongly, but we'll find out what that all means. But we've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset, including you will be very upset. But that's just gotten to me some information that the killing has stopped, that the executions have stopped. They're not going to have an execution, which a lot of people were talking about for the last couple of days. Today was going to be the day of execution. We have been notified.
Yeah, and so Pezeshkian, I'm sorry, not Pezeshkian, Arakchi, Abbas Arakchi, who's the Iranian foreign minister, went and did an interview with Bret Baier, and Bret Baier asked him some pretty interesting questions. I'm going to pivot to that in a second, but before, I wanted to pull up this video that I just mentioned. This was posted right around the time we went live. This is Trump being asked questions, leaving the White House, and he mentions why he didn't end up ultimately going into Iran. But before that, he's asked, or maybe it's after that, he's asked, why align yourself with Delcy Rodriguez, not Machado? Listen to what he says. Oh, wait, I'm not sharing the tab. Almost got caught there. Here we go. Try again.
Why align Delcy Rodriguez and the remnants of the Maduro regime and not with Machado, who has the support of the Venezuelan people?
Well, if you ever remember a place called Iraq where everybody was fired, every single person, the police, the generals, everybody was fired, and they ended up being ISIS. Instead of just getting down to business, they ended up being ISIS. So I remember that. But I'll tell you, I had a great meeting yesterday by a person who I have a lot of respect for, and she has respect, obviously, for me and our country. And she gave me her Nobel Prize. But I'll tell you what, I got to know her. I never met her before, and I was very, very impressed. She's this is a fine woman.
And then he says that and he just immediately walks away. So I'm reacting to this in real time. I haven't seen this yet. And when he says that, the police, the generals, everybody was fired, and then he says they ended up being ISIS. He's referring to the people who came in after them. That is signal, because the people who come in after them are who? Well, they are, think back to what Eric Prince said during that interview. It was the private military contractors, the proxy groups that we, the State Department, the CIA, we hired to run things in Iraq. And then those groups, those proxy groups, those paramilitary groups, private military groups, as Eric Prince would call them, ended up being ISIS, which is 100% true. Because all ISIS was in 2011, they just took all of these existing organizations, these existing militias, and they just tied them all together under one banner. And they called it ISIS. That's what ISIS was, including Al-Qaeda. So Trump just gave you the signal right there. The people who were running Iraq with the blessing of the U.S. State Department after Saddam Hussein was taken out was ISIS. And he's basically saying that if he did that again in Venezuela with Machado, the equivalent of ISIS would come in, the cartels would come in and take over. And so he's going with Delcy Rodriguez because she's not the cartel and she's not ISIS. That's signal right there. All right. And then in the same, I think, moment, we get a question. Why did you not attack Iran?
Officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself. You had yesterday scheduled over 800 hangings. They didn't hang anyone. They canceled the hangings. That had a big impact.
They canceled the hangings. The hangings are canceled, everybody. He says, this is a post. Oh my gosh, this is great. I greatly respect the fact that all scheduled hangings, which were going to take place yesterday, over 800 of them, have been canceled by the leadership of Iran. Thank you. Oh my God, I love him so much, man. We're never going to have a leader like this ever again. Ever again. We're spoiled rotten with him. Okay, so I want to go now to the Bret Baier Arakchi interview, because this is kind of what kicked off the whole narrative about hangings and all that, because Bret Baier just confronted him about the situation.
Forces shooting the Iranian people
That's not the one that I wanted. I wanted here, this one. What is your message to Trump?
If you have a message for President Trump, who obviously is and has talked about and is considering some kind of action to help the protesters on the ground, if you have a message for him, what is the message?
My message is do not repeat the same mistake that you did in June. If you try a failed experience, you will get the same result. In June, you destroyed the facilities, the machines, but the technology cannot be bombed, and the determination also cannot be bombed. Now, Iran proved to be ready for negotiation, for diplomacy. We have proved that in the past 20 years, in 2015, in 2025, every time. But it was the US who always escaped from diplomacy, who cut the diplomacy and opted for war. My message is, between war and diplomacy is a better way, although we don't have any positive experience from the United States, but still, diplomacy is much better than war.
Okay. There's a few more clips I want to play before I have to shut it down. Here's another clip from that segment. Oh, wait. I'm not sharing that tab. There we go.
It's proxies. I think it's a wrong, it's a mistake to call them proxies. We don't have proxies in the region. They are. You've been funding. No, they are movements who are fighting with occupation, who are fighting for their rights, and we only support them. We only support them. They are not doing any job for us. They are fighting. They are fighting for their own, causes, and we support their cause. Proxies.
Okay, so that was a question about proxies. And then this one, where he says, yeah, this is the one that I really wanted. This is about sovereignty, the question of sovereignty.
You also talked about continuing a ballistic missile program. Is that continuing today? That's why the president said he was moving forward on the nuclear program that was expanding.
No, both enrichment and our defense capabilities are our legitimate rights. As a full and committed member of NPT, we have every right to do enrichment for peaceful purposes. And you cannot tell another country that you shouldn't exercise your right, otherwise you will be attacked.
Yeah, but Mr. Foreign Minister, we talked about this. We talked about this months ago. You also talked about continuing a ballistic.
Like the individual equivalent would be telling somebody they're not allowed to own a gun. You're not allowed to own a gun. Why not? Well, because we don't trust you with the gun. Okay, well, now we're going to have a discussion about the Second Amendment. It's the exact same thing at the national level. And then here is Vukic, the president of Serbia, who says that this movement, this whole thing that's happening in this whole thing that's happening, he's speaking a foreign language, so I'm going to have to read it for him. He says, I will talk about that question. He's asked about Iran, and he says, I will talk about that question calmly. And as for Iran, look at what fate is. Please read the book. I think it's called Operation Ajax. It is definitely Operation Ajax or All the Shah's Men. Don't hold me to it. All the Shah's Men is the name of the book. And it tells the story of Operation Ajax. It's an operation from 1953. How Reza Pahlavi, with the help of the Americans, the American ambassador, and the American state, took power. Look now, 73 years later, literally now, with all due respect, of course, and hats off to Mossad for how they carry out the action, how Mossad and the CIA are carrying it out following the same recipe 73 years later. Just as some dreamed they would carry out the same here in Serbia, he's referring to. And as it was on October 5th and so on, after what, 25 years, the wheel of history always turns back, unfortunately. Only some have learned something from that history and some have not. I have a longer clip from Colonel McGregor where he says the same thing. He says that he thinks it's Mossad and CIA running a color revolution. We don't have time to play that one here. But I do have time to play this one, which is... I don't know if that video was playing or not, guys, but if it wasn't, I read you what he said, so it's not like you missed anything with the audio. I had it on mute. But here's another one from Arakchi, and then I'm going to show you an article.
I have to tell you that a misinformation campaign is going on at the same time.
And you're suggesting that it's Israel and Mossad acting like Iranian forces, shooting the Iranian people to make casualties to spur on the action of President Trump. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that don't believe that, Mr. Foreign Minister.
No, Mossad has already confessed that.
They may be on the ground, sir, but as far as them killing hundreds and hundreds of people to make it look like you did, it does not appear in the video that we get out that this is a full level of calm.
I have to tell you that a misinformation campaign is...
Yeah, so Brett Baer says, yeah, Mossad has admitted that they're on the ground. That doesn't mean they're killing people. And yes, Mossad has admitted that they're on the ground. They're openly bragging about it in Israel, that that's what they're doing. And then here actually is David Barnea visiting the U.S. This is the director of Mossad. This is from Barak Ravid, the guy that we always like to go to at Axios, who seems to be Trump's guy in terms of reporting on the Middle East. Mossad director visits U.S. for Iran consultations. And we'll dive deeper into this on Tuesday, but it's important to remember that David Barnea he became Mossad director in 2022 when Yossi Cohen was caught exposed sneaking around the DR Congo, trying to overthrow their government, had to resign in disgrace. So this guy got promoted to Mossad director. Prior to that, he was appointed to the Soleimani file. He was the guy who basically was tasked with tracking Soleimani and running operations against him. And on January, I guess it would have been January 2nd, but January 3rd was when they scheduled, 2020 was when they scheduled to take out Soleimani. Israel was going to kill him with the backing of the U.S., of Trump and the U.S. military. And then this guy, David Barnea, picks up the phone and calls the White House the night before on January 2nd and says, yeah, we actually aren't going to do that. We don't want to kill Soleimani. Sorry. Thanks anyway. Bye. And then Trump, as Trump tells the story, Trump says that Raising Cane, right? General Kane said, sir, if you want to go through with it, we have the capability to do it. And Trump said, do it. Take him out. And then Trump later said, I will never forgive Netanyahu for backing out at the last second like that. What a coward. So Barnea is now coming to the U.S. to consult on the Iran situation. And it's very clear now that is what we're looking at. We're looking at a color revolution that kind of got short fused. And here is Lindsey Graham contradicting Trump, saying the executions have stopped. And Lindsey Graham is out there saying, quote, every indication that I've seen says that the Iranian regime's killing of protesters is still very much in full swing. The death toll is mounting by the hour, hoping that help is on the way. In the final video I'll show before we sign off, the funniest video that will leave you with a laugh. Let's go, going back to the news brief. If it will load. Internet is just crawling. Hopefully the stream is not suffering as a result. There it is. There she blows.
There are a lot of headlines out there that are, in my view, not accurate. President Trump's resolve is not the question. The question is, when we do an operation like this, should it be bigger or smaller? I'm in the camp of bigger. Time will tell. I'm hopeful and optimistic that the regime days are numbered.
Yeah, and this guy, Lindsey Graham, came out and is now saying he's rethinking the relationship with the Arabs because he understands the Arabs stepped in and said, "Do not bomb Iran. We don't want another war in the Middle East," which is exactly what I said when he suggested last week that bombing Iran would bring Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords. I said that's bullshit. It's the opposite. It will push them further away. And now that's exactly what's happened. He's saying he's rethinking whether or not the Arabs are actually our allies and whether or not we actually should like MBS and the Qataris and the Emiratis. I mean, he seems so despondent right there. So just the winds have been taken out of it. Somebody like killed his dog. It looks like, that's the expression he's given there. So, all right, guys, speaking of dogs, I need to take my dog to the vet. So please hit the thumbs up. I'm going to check on rants. I would be shocked if there are any because we weren't on live on Rumble the whole time. I don't think. Claire Cat, $22. Claire Cat 367. Thank you, Ghost. Familiar with Joel Finkelstein in NCR. It was on Dr. Drew yesterday. Interesting what he said about Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I am familiar with Norm Finkelstein, if that's who you're talking about. Oh no, Joel Finkelstein. I don't know if I'm as familiar with Joel Finkelstein. I'm looking at the clip right now. I'm not familiar with this guy, but I will go listen to this. It looks like it's like an hour and a half podcast. So I will go listen to this. Thank you for sharing. And I will synthesize that and probably try to include it in my Tuesday presentation. But we will lock in for Tuesday to go deep into Iran because there's a lot to talk about there. And obviously the connection points with Venezuela are very compelling. But hit the thumbs up, guys. And the takeaway here again is that Iran and Venezuela are not regime change operations. All right. Y'all have a good day, and I will see y'all when I see you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.